Being very entitled and controlling, narcissists have no difficulty stepping all over your personal boundaries. So that's why I put together an extensive video class called This Is Me. It has 25 videos, written documents, guided questions. I'm going to teach you how to have healthy boundaries. There's a link below, and I hope you'll find it to be quite therapeutic. The longer you engage with a narcissistic individual, the more clear it becomes that they will both create and then perpetuate discord. I guess we all have to be good at something, and they're really good at that. And it can be the ultimate frustration because it's like we can do better than this, but it just simply doesn't happen. Now, one of the things that we see that is part of the narcissistic pattern is these are individuals who operate with a distorted view of reality. They don't have a good understanding of who they are, and then they don't have a good understanding of who you are. And it's going to be essential for you to understand some of the distortions they have, because as problems and that discord perpetuates, then they're going to turn around and say, yeah, it's all because of you. And they bring all sorts of assumptions about relationships that are just not reality-based. Now, like anybody else, the narcissist wants to be respected. I like to be respected. I'm sure you do too. But their understanding of being respected is entirely different than the normal person. What they want is they want you to honor them with exaggerated affirmation. In other words, they think, yeah, I'm entitled to the highest degree of honor and respect that you can give me, and I want to be elevated. They have to have that. And what this does is, with this attitude of entitlement, it sets up all sorts of blind spots in the way that they engage with you. For example, they can't see the full measure of the insecurity that drives them to have this exaggerated reinforcement. They are unable to listen because they think there's only one person in the room that I need to listen to, and it sure isn't you. They're unwilling to compromise. They just simply can't do it. It's not in their makeup to do so. They can't harmonize. They can't see the good that's on the inside of you. They can't stop judging you. They can't stop criticizing you. They can't contain their disgust and their disdain for you. They can't take responsibility for their multiple mistakes or failures. They can't manage their own hurt feelings. And so that's what I mean when I say they have distortion, and then they create and perpetuate tension because of it. And yet, in other words, they have a lot of ineptitude, and yet they're going to cling to that attitude of entitlement. Go figure. Now, I want you to just think, when was the last time that you heard a narcissistic individual say something like, hey, you got me there. Sure enough, I do have those blind spots, and I really need to change and adjust. They can't do that. Instead, they need you to be in the subordinate position. And as they need you in the subordinate position, they have all sorts of requirements that they're hoping they can gain from you. And they want to hear certain thoughts. They want to hear certain expressions from you toward them. Let me run through some of these, and I want you to pick up on the fact that, they honestly believe that this is appropriate, but I want you to see just exactly how distorted they are. Now, one of the things they want to hear from you is, okay, I have to admit, my opinions and my interpretations are poorly conceived. They desperately need you to hear that because they have to have the final word, and they want to be the one that decides, what's correct and what's incorrect. They want to hear from you, I admit I make lots of mistakes, and I mean lots of mistakes. And then they want to hear further from you, please forgive me for my many faults. And that kind of allows them to feel really high and grand. And then they want to hear, well, actually, the more I observe you, the more I realize how right you are on so many different levels. In fact, you're probably a genius. They love hearing something like that. In their entitlement, they want to hear you say something like, I've never met anyone quite as enlightened as you, or quite as fun as you, or quite as talented as you, or quite as attractive as you, or quite as clever as you, blah, blah, blah. In other words, you're so exceptional. They really desperately need to hear that from you. Or they want to hear, why don't we just do what you think is best? I mean, after all, you can hardly do any wrong. This is you we're talking about. And they're thinking, oh, glad you noticed that. In addition, they also want to hear, when you and I are frustrated with one another, your anger is valid, and I realize my anger is not valid. And it's like, well, it's about time you understood that one. They also want to hear, you say, even when something difficult or bad happens to us, it was probably my fault. Or taking that a little bit further, they may think, well, if you have made a mistake, they want to hear you say something like, but I'm sure there must be some sort of good explanation for that. Because they just can't be in that human space with you. And then in addition, they want to hear you say, I'm very comfortable letting you have the final word in any kind of dispute or difference that we have. And then ultimately, what they want to hear from you is, why don't I just hand over my power to you? Now, see, that's their delusional thinking. And they actually think when you come along with those types of words, if you ever were to say something like that, it's like, that sounds really good to me. And they actually mean it when they think, you should say those things to me because it's accurate. That's what I'm saying when I say you're dealing with somebody who doesn't understand life at all. Now, there are so many words that we use to describe the pattern of narcissism, and so many of those words are either attached to or an extension of this mindset of entitlement. We hear words like gaslighting, or alternate reality, or false superiority, or manipulation, or they're the chronic victim, or they operate with a false self, or they're very fear-based. And all of those are seen in what I'm saying to you today that shows up with their attitude of entitlement. They're covering up all of these different problems that they bring to the equation. Like I say, they create and then they perpetuate the discord, and then somehow it's your fault because it can't possibly be them. Their notion, their motto, if you can put it this way, is to say, I'm entitled, you need to laud me. How about that? Is that something you want to go along with? Now, I know that as you try to respond to these individuals, it's like, where do I begin? Well, the first thing we're going to say is, I know that it's very difficult for you to fathom the depth of their delusional thinking, but just even if you can't understand it, and it is beyond explanation sometimes, accept it as truth. Know what you're dealing with. There's sometimes when you throw your hands up and say, I can't believe this. Recently, I was at a speaking engagement, and I talked with many individuals about some of the rejections they had in their life. One had moved several hundred miles away from a mother who was just totally overbearing and wanted to run this young lady's life. Another had, after their parents had died, had a sister who had to take care of everything and do everything exactly her way with respect to settling the estate. Another person had adult children who were saying, here's what you owe me money-wise. And it's like, you have a job. Take care of yourself. It's like, no, give me more. And another one that had a situation where they were in a religious system and they didn't think correctly, so they were asked to leave. And on. You can have individuals who can say, I've been around these entitled people, and they honestly think they know everything. And if I come against them, then it's curtains for me. And then the fatal mistake you can make is, I need to make sure these people understand what they're doing to me. Well, why don't we just say, they're delusional. I accept the truth that they are delusional. Which then leads to the notion that says, perhaps the best thing I can do, at least for myself, is to cease in my attempts to make them see the truth. If they want to be entitled, that's certainly their prerogative. It's based on false premises, and yet that's where they are. And it's not my job to reform who that person is. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to maintain my independence. And I'm going to be very independent when it comes to that individual. I'm going to decide what I believe in. I'm going to decide what my priorities are going to be. I'm going to decide what my preferences are. I'm going to decide which initiatives I'll take. And when they come along and say, hey, wait a minute, you owe me a certain amount of fealty, it's like, well, in your mind, maybe you think that, but in my mind, no, I'm going to go ahead and be me. Simply put, I don't take my cues from someone who doesn't even bother to know who I am. They don't know themselves, and so why in the world would I say, sure, I'll go along with you? They're operating with, like I say, that psychological ineptitude. Now, the narcissist is going to continue with their entitled attitudes. I'm hoping in as you respond to that person and as you move forward, you can think, I see through the nonsense that goes along with that. I'm moving on, and I'm going to consult my own personal guidance as I do. And when they come against me and tell me how wrong I am and how I must come back into their fold, they're entitled to that, I'm thinking, well, that's something you can think, but I'm going to manage my day today based on what I believe is wisest and best. And you're entitled to do with it whatever you want to do. I'm going to go ahead and be me. I'm not very good at trying to be what somebody else dictates that I'm supposed to be. And I hope this gives you some good insight with respect to what you're dealing with. It can be so frustrating, and yet I'm hoping even as they don't have clarity about life, you can. And that's so essential here on Team Healthy as we're working with each other in that direction. If you haven't already subscribed, Gus and I will keep more videos coming in your direction. Gus isn't delusional. He's just relaxed. And so we appreciate it when you allow us to be a part of your journey. Hit that subscribe button. In addition, I know that there are times when you deal with something like this that you'd like to have some help. I've been sponsored for years by the people at BetterHelp.com. The pandemic showed that online therapy can be quite effective, and in fact, it can be more affordable as well. And so if the need is there, go through the link that we have below. There's somebody that you can select, and I'm hoping they would be able to say to you, I want to know you. I want to hear what's going on with you, and let's see if we can get the best version of yourself up and running. And so please get the assistance you would need. Now, in my retirement from my own therapy practice of over 40 years, I've been putting together courses, online courses, and they're available. We have links below. Each course has at least 25 teaching videos, and each video has handouts and guided questions. We have anger games about how not to get sucked into the anger that the narcissist brings, along with This Is Me about boundaries, free to be, ready, set, connect about having healthy connections. So avail yourself to those resources. Along with that, on my website, we have my webinars of a different nature. They're 90-minute presentations with various topics, along with access to my podcast, plenty of articles, my books, etc. So lots of resources. Okay, the narcissist can have that attitude of entitlement all day long. You can count on it. That's how they think. But it's like, I see through it, and I don't want the chaos that comes with that. Therefore, you just be who you need to be, but I'm going to be my own separate, independent self. And in doing so, I hope that it positions you to be the person of peace that they're not able to be. But nonetheless, I'm hoping you can find that steadiness and that peace that you so richly deserve.